Hi, welcome back to My Favorite Mistake. I'm Mark Graven. Our guest today is Gina Mundy. She's author of the book, A Parent's Guide to a Safer Childbirth, Expecting the Best, Using the Power of Knowledge to Help You Deliver a Healthy Baby. So Gina is an attorney who specializes in childbirth cases. Throughout her career, Gina has traveled nationwide, engaging with healthcare professionals, including doctors, nurses, and midwives to explore all aspects of labor and delivery. So we'll be able to talk about that today, including some of the issues that can arise, unfortunately, during labor and delivery that would impact both the mother and baby. So I'll link to Gina's full website and full bio in the show notes. She lives in my home state. She's in Michigan with her family, which includes her husband, her kids, and dogs. And her bio says she enjoys visiting wineries. So that's something else we have in common. Welcome to the podcast, Gina. How are you?
Thank you, Mark, for having me. I am doing great, and I am excited for our conversation today.
Yeah. And before we get into that, I have to ask, not to get too sidetracked on wine, do you have a favorite region or winery or wine to visit and or open up at home?
Oh, yeah. So Niagara on the lake. So you know where
Mm-hmm.
Niagara Falls is? Niagara on the Lake is right there, and it's like a secret winery place, and just filled with the most amazing wines. So that by far is my favorite. And then I really enjoy the Michigan wines. I have been hitting the Michigan wineries last few years a lot. It seems like they've really nailed it down on
Mm-hmm.
how to make some good wine. So there's Marquette Winery in Ludington, and that is probably by far one of my most favorite wineries.
Well, cool. I'll have to go check that. I'll expand my horizons and support my home state a little bit someday and check that out. So, okay, so this is not the My Favorite Winery podcast. That might be fun to do someday. Maybe that would be popular, but we are going to talk about mistakes as we always do. So, Gina, I would love to hear your story. What would you say is your favorite mistake?
So this is a hard one, and I just want to put it out there. I've been reading your book and learning all about the mistakes, and I know this question is subjective, but I remember when I first thought of my answer, it was literally 10 years ago. I had gone to, so I'm a partner at my law firm, and I'd been a partner at the time, and I had just had my third baby and child, and it's not a baby anymore. And basically, I had gone to my firm, and I'm like, listen, I'm capped out. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. It was Christmas. I have my little man. I got my two girls, and I'm also married to a pretty busy business owner, and so I felt like my kids were like little orphans running around. So I had gone to my firm, and I'm like, I can't do this. I quit. And they were like, okay, you're stressed out over the holidays. You need to go on vacation. And when you come back, we'll talk about it. And that was over Christmas. And I just kind of, I didn't really work. I kind of kept an eye on my cases. We didn't really talk about it. It was kind of odd, I'll be honest. And then
Mhm.
I think we were into April, and I emailed or called, I don't remember, my kind of boss at the time. And I'm like, listen, you guys got to stop paying me. I think I'm really going to quit. And I mean, I had health insurance benefits. It was great. I'm like, this is crazy. I mean, I'm keeping an eye on my cases, making sure nothing bad. There's other people working on them,
Yeah,
whatever.
barely.
And so they were like, well, if you could come in and just argue one more thing. And it was against a pretty prominent attorney in our community, actually, since you know it. It was Jeff Feiger. And
Oh, yeah,
you
big name.
come in? It was a baby case I had worked up. And he's like, can you argue, this
Mm.
against him? And then we'll go to lunch, and then we'll figure out, if there's something that we can accommodate you or whatever. And so that day I went and argued against him, and we ended up, we were pretty happy with the results. So then we went to lunch. So it was interesting because that kind of got me on my high again. I'd had my long break
Mm.
and
Mhm.
and whatever. But basically, then we decided that I would actually stay, at the firm, and that I would not quit. And we made some adjustments or whatever. So that was 10 years ago. And now that so I just continued to work instead of going to be a stay-at-home mom, which is kind of what I wanted to do. So now, 10 years later, my kids are older. They're 20, 16, 10.
Mhm.
And I feel like, did I miss something? I kept working.
Yeah.
So, that's always been, I don't know. I've always struggled with that. I never did try to quit again. I did try to pay more, focus on the family as much as I could or whatever. But no, I
Yeah.
stayed and, I continued to work over the next, 10 years.
So, I mean, it sounds like as you're thinking through this, and thank you for sharing that and your reflections, because I think part of the subjectivity is trying to decide, was it a mistake? It
Mhm.
sounds like you're still. I appreciate the process of still trying to think through that. Was it a mistake what were some of the adjustments that were made in terms of, was it a matter of having fewer cases, having better balance to be home more that made it seem okay, at least
So,
during that time?
yeah, so it's interesting. My office is right next to where you grew up,
Mm-hmm.
but that is about an hour from my house. So one of the adjustments was I don't need to come in anymore.
Yeah.
So it was,
Yeah.
it was things like, but that's huge. Just 2 hours in my day. Okay, well, now I have 2 more hours. Plus, I don't have to get
Mm-hmm.
ready. So there's an extra few minutes too,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whatnot. But I could probably, finish the full thought on the good part of that decision, or I don't know if you wanted to ask me about it.
No, go ahead.
so,
Go ahead.
so to come full circle with my mistake,
Mm-hmm.
my favorite mistake, because I did stay in my industry and whatnot. So I'm an attorney specializing in the childbirth cases. So then 19 years deep into my profession, I wrote a book.
Mm.
And I wrote a book to expecting parents on how to basically avoid these mistakes and complications that I've seen now for 21 years and have a healthy baby. And I can tell
Mm-hmm.
you right now, if I would have left the industry 10 years ago, I would not have written this book to parents.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Yeah.
absolutely no way that, I wouldn't have had the knowledge base. I wouldn't have kept my foot in the door. I wouldn't have continued working up these cases. And just so your audience understands, when I say there's a childbirth case or a case involving childbirth, these are cases involving the birth of a baby when there's a mistake or a complication. And basically something goes wrong and baby is not born healthy. Babies may
Mm-hmm.
pass away during childbirth. In some sad cases, moms passed away. So
Yeah.
basically, as the attorney, I come in and I figure out what happened, what went wrong, why, and what should have been done so baby was born healthy or mom around to raise her baby.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, like you had said, these questions have taken me all over the United States, meeting with delivery teams, hashing out every aspect of labor and delivery. I still continued to travel even with my different schedule, but I continued to travel and
Mm-hmm.
still learn and whatever. But
Yeah.
again, staying in the industry then helped me to have the knowledge base and the foundation to write this book to help other families. So when I made that decision, basically, I've always gotten involved in the aftermath of something going wrong. Now,
Mm-hmm.
with writing this book, I'm trying to get involved before childbirth. So
Yeah.
hopefully prevent these mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot to explore there. I should have let you finish your closing statement. You hadn't made your closing
I'm
statement
like, I
yet.
can come full circle with the mistake aspect.
Yeah. Not that we're not wrapping up the case here, meaning the episode. But yeah. So I mean, I hear, like, even if you're still wondering, like, what was it a mistake to not quit? It led to something positive. You're proud of the book, and we'll talk more about what you've learned and what mothers and hospitals need to be doing. But I'm not trying to pry too much into family life, but since you brought it up, your kids are now 10 and what ages? Like, there's still that nagging doubt of, like, what might have been different had you stayed home with them, or just
Yeah.
that lingering what
Well,
if.
now that they're older, I'm the 20-year-old's going to be out soon. The 16-year-old, if she announces one more time that she's leaving when she's 18, I'm just like, oh my goodness, I know you're leaving when you're 18. But, all of a sudden, I just feel like I'm getting really close to, wait a minute, now I have all the time in the world to work. I can work
Yeah.
all day, every day obviously. And then my
Mhm.
10-year-old, he's becoming way more independent. He's very into sports. If you can't throw a football, he does not want to hang out with you. So on Sunday, I literally had to sit and throw a football back and forth. Otherwise, I don't think he'd talk to me. So
Mhm.
if you want time with the kids, you have to throw a football. So I'm like, wait a minute, did I miss something? Because now
Mm.
that I realize, I'm 48, so I have many more working years. So I'm just hoping I didn't miss out on too much of that, mommy homemaker stuff or Susie homemaker stuff.
Yeah. Well, and still, I mean, I guess maybe it's a situation where only more time will be more telling. But
Right.
the opportunity to take advantage of the time you do have when they do enjoy being around you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, well, we'll see how I do as a grandma. we'll see. We'll see if I can get my act together as a grandma.
Yeah. So again, our guest today, Gina Mundy. Gina, tell us more about your path into this focus, this study, this passion around um, trying to help prevent childbirth mistakes.
So writing a book was never on my radar until we had like a near tragic family event. So my sister's oldest daughter was pregnant, and she basically had a birth experience that was very, very scary. The
Mm-hmm.
day that she went into labor, I was 1,100 miles away that day. And I remember it was 5 o'clock, March 17th, and I was in my kitchen and my phone rang and my kids ran over because they were waiting to hear the good news that cousin Sam, had the first baby of our next generation. And I answered the phone and it was speakerphone. And instead of hearing, she had a girl, it was my sister hysterically screaming, the
Oh,
baby crashed, the baby crashed.
oh,
And obviously, I just ran out the door so my kids could not hear their Aunt Kelly
mm,
screaming. Uh, and I went outside and I sat on my porch listening to her cry hysterically. And of course, my lawyer brain was going through her labor, like, what happened? What happened? And
mhm,
it's interesting because her labor had gone very similar to how a legal baby case goes, because there are
mhm,
common facts, there are common issues that occur in these cases, and it was right there. I mean, it was scary watching it unfold, but then as I listened to my sister cry, I went from my attorney analysis to a human analysis, and I'm like, this is how the families feel. And it was
yeah,
awful. And it was
mhm,
like, there was, at that point, no decision now is going to change the past. And you can just sit and you can hope and you can pray. And that's what I did. And we did get news that the baby was going to be okay. But, that moment really, it
yeah,
just stuck with me. And it
yeah,
was it was hard that day. It just that weekend was hard. It was a Friday at 5 that we'd gotten the phone call, and it was just a
mhm,
hard weekend. And then I realized, what if I'm not around for the birth of my grandkids? Or what if I'm 1,100 miles away? And then I'm like, wait a minute, I need to start writing down what I know, because there are common facts, there are common issues, like I just said. And I can tell you, as an attorney specializing in childbirth cases, how I would prepare my family for childbirth is completely different than how a normal family, who doesn't know what I know, would prepare. So I
mhm,
started writing everything down. And as I wrote it down, it was like a floodgate of information. And
mhm.
I quickly figured out that this is information that could not only help my kids have healthy kids, but it could help families across the world have healthy babies.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for doing that, and hopefully there were no ill effects for that baby as they were growing up.
Yeah, our baby is fine. So
Okay.
there's, in these cases, there's a lot of, there's close calls. And we landed on the right side of a close call. In my
Yeah.
cases, it's the other side. It's the wrong side of a close call that, a lot of
Yeah.
times, end up in the baby cases. Because unfortunately, families can be one decision or minutes from a healthy baby.
Right. Yeah. And the bad outcomes range from death to lifelong disability
Right.
as the result of some of these mistakes. And I guess that's where the legal battles and the settlements become potentially huge. The cost of care, a lifetime of, let's say, special care for a child who's been harmed during a childbirth mistake.
Oh yeah, it's astronomical. It's it's a lot of money to care
Mhm.
for, a baby that has suffered a significant brain injury during birth.
Mhm. So when there's a bad outcome, and this is probably what gets litigated, trying to distinguish between a naturally occurring bad outcome versus something that was clearly caused by a mistake. Like, that's where the legal battle comes into play?
Exactly. It's, whether there was anything that could have been prevented. Sometimes, unfortunately, a baby will come in with a pre-existing brain injury before mom even walks in the door.
Mm-hmm.
Those babies also have a hard time transitioning from intrauterine life inside mom to, we call it extrauterine life. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
distinguishing, is this a baby that had a pre-existing injury and just then couldn't handle labor, or was it something that happened during labor? Yeah, it's a huge issue in the cases.
Yeah. Um, so what are some of the most common problems, or especially problems caused by a mistake within the delivery room?
Oh, that's, yes, chapter 11 of my book, which
Mm-hmm.
makes it different than any other pregnancy book, goes over the top 10. I'll give you
Mm.
the top three. Number one,
Okay.
the most common fact in a legal baby case is the drug called Pitocin. Pitocin is the drug that is used to induce mom's labor. So if you hear of, okay, I'm going in for an induction of labor, that's going to happen with Pitocin. So when there is a mistake or there's a complication, typically Pitocin is involved. So number two.
Well, and what goes wrong? Is it the wrong dose of that medication, or what's the mistake involved with that medication?
So it's all over the board. Sometimes
Mm.
Pitocin, it doesn't have to be the direct cause of the problem. Sometimes it is, but I'll tell you, take it as it is. It's in almost every case. When it does become a problem in many cases, it's because it is a dosage issue. So Pitocin is a very individualized drug, meaning how one
Mm.
person responds to it is completely different than how someone else responds to it. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have a doctor, and I'll tell you, I don't know how much you know about Pitocin across the board.
I know nothing. So
Okay, so across the board, there is agreement that Pitocin can be administered safely and it can be a good option for some moms. Absolutely.
mhm.
It comes into, individual circumstances where maybe they're increasing it too fast, too much, and
Mhm.
that makes mom contract too much. Because I'll tell you, I'm known for saying this, but contractions suck. Contractions suck. You're a guy, but contractions do suck. I'm sure you've
Yeah.
heard. And mom's lucky. Mom can get an epidural. Contractions, though, I think what parents don't realize also suck for baby. And
Mhm.
it's because when baby is in the uterus, when there's a contraction, the uterus squeezes down on the baby. When that
Mm.
happens, the oxygen to baby stops. Now,
Oh,
nobody freak out. That I know everyone freaks out when I say that. No one freak out.
right,
Babies are literally made to handle contractions. However,
right.
Pitocin, those are artificial contractions. You
Mm.
want to try to mimic what your natural contractions would be, and that can be very difficult. So, making
Mhm.
sure you take the slow and steady, let it hit your sweet spot
Mhm.
method is definitely going to help you have a safe Pitocin induction. Because what happens is, a lot of times in these cases, there's too many contractions. And then it's just, they describe a contraction like going underwater. So just imagine, so during the contraction, baby's like underwater, you're underwater. As the contraction releases, you come up for air. So if you keep contracting underwater, the baby can only handle so much,
Mhm.
i.e., that, when my sister called, the baby crashed. I'm like, ah, crap, too many contractions,
Mhm.
um, so that's probably the main thing. So, and just so your audience understands, in my book, while I may identify, hey, listen, Pitocin is the number one most common fact in a baby case. It's a drug that, I have seen and analyzed since February 2003 when I had my first case. So then I have a chapter on this is what parents need to know to have a safe Pitocin induction.
Mhm.
So, but number two,
Mhm.
this one shouldn't surprise you, a busy labor and delivery unit.
Mhm.
So many times I sit and I meet with people and they're like, I remember that day. It was extremely busy. So that's basically, everybody's running hard. They're running thin. So
Mhm.
that definitely is a common fact in the baby cases.
That kind of environment is just going to lead to more human error. That's just a fact. It's part of our human nature. When we're under stress, when there's too much going on, we get distracted, we forget. I mean, that's a mistake factory. That kind of environment.
Oh, 100%. And so in that scenario. So that's why I wrote the book to parents. Okay, listen, you roll up to the hospital and you got a busy labor and delivery unit. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to understand and whatnot. And listen, mom's in labor. She needs to focus. So, I give them other ways to handle it. Like, okay, dad, time for you to step up. Instinctively, men want to protect their wife, they want to protect their baby. I tell them how to do that, in the book. Or, grandmas are actually loving my book too, because a lot of moms show
Mhm.
up because they've had their, for grandkids. I will, and
Yeah.
that's going to be me. Grandma's going to be there waiting.
Mhm.
But again, identify the problem. But families, this is how you can make sure if you do roll up, this is what you need to know to make sure that, nothing like that happens to, your baby.
Yeah. Okay.
Number,
Oh, now give us a third.
yes, number three, most mistakes and complications occur after mom's water breaks.
Mhm.
So that basically what happens, baby's hanging out in the uterus with the placenta, with the umbilical cord. So placenta is all the nutrients for baby. Umbilical cord's like the lifeline. And then everything is surrounded by this fluid.
Mhm.
So when the water or that fluid, the amniotic fluid, comes out of mom and it leaves that environment changes. And it can
Mhm.
leave, baby can be more susceptible to an injury or something happening inside. So once the water breaks, it's very important to do, certain things. But also with that one, I hear a lot of doctors recommend, hey, let's break your bag of water.
Mhm.
Okay, so my point with getting that out there to families is like, that's a really big decision.
Yeah.
This is no, if baby is sitting pretty, and everything's fine, don't be careful about breaking your bag of water. So, if the doctor says, hey, I'm going to break your bag of water, I think I wrote in the book literally word for word, mom, dad should look at the doctor and say, is there a medical reason why you want to break my water, or do you want to be home for dinner? Listen, as a childbirth attorney, I've heard both.
Mhm.
So they
Yeah.
will break water if they have something to do. Unfortunately, now listen, a physician may be listening to this and be like, I would never do that. Great.
Mhm.
You're a great doctor. I'm glad. Please. It's like every
Yeah.
profession, you have people who do different things. So this is not across the
Yeah.
board to all doctors by any means.
Right.
I know some amazing OBGYNs who would not do that.
Yeah. I've heard there was one hospital system I was working with that was really trying to push back when mothers were potentially making a mistake in choosing a day for an elective C-section. And, they have a lot of data that shows that, if that elective C-section is done too early, maybe at the doctor's choosing, or a lot of times it was the mother's choosing. They would have situations where mom wanted the baby born on a day that was cute or meaningful to them. I want to have a Halloween baby. I want to have my baby born on my mom's birthday. I want to have my baby born on whatever the reasons are. Like, the hospital was in that situation where, people in healthcare would say the customer is not always right. If mom says, I want you to induce me, and it's too early, for a good outcome, this hospital was getting better at communicating and basically saying no. Now, the mother might be upset from a patient satisfaction standpoint, but I mean, come on, the safety of the baby has got to be the most important thing.
Oh, 100%. And if the hospital or doctor, if it's too early, then they're making a good decision. So, you know what? And if she doesn't like it, she can go somewhere else.
And I think that happened in some cases. So,
yep. Sorry. But no, definitely, you have this innocent, helpless baby. And if you have a mom flaking out that she wants to have a Halloween baby at the risk of having a healthy baby, absolutely. Put your foot down. 100%.
Yeah. I think, there's systemic factors like, how busy, how well staffed is the unit. I wonder, like, does time of day or day of week matter? Like, when in the story you told earlier, when you said it was Friday at 5:00, like, in my head, maybe I'm, overreacting, but a little bit of a warning bell goes off like that. Was that a time of day where, I don't know, maybe some staff had gone home, or, I'm not trying to blame the individuals, but I'm thinking like an overnight delivery, an early Sunday morning delivery. Are there certain times of day where, I don't know, because of fatigue or other reasons, there might be more mistakes?
Shift change.
Have you seen that at all?
No, you're right.
Work?
No, that's actually a great question. I address it in the book. Actually, that's one of the more common factors in a baby case is shift change. There's number 4. You got it. Number 4. Ding, ding, ding. Yes, shift change. Yes, you have, so labor and delivery is, you probably know this, 12 hours. So you have people who have now done a 12-hour shift, especially during the night. And then you have a fresh day shift coming on. So there's definitely, I have a lot of shift changes, 100%. And then in terms of timing or a month, so in Michigan, the labor and delivery units are really busy May, June, and July. Those are like the busy times. And then the other busy times are in the morning. So those are definitely the busier times, May, June, and July. And now I did not include this in the book, but hospitals that are teaching institutions that have residents, doctors in training, basically these are, kids. I can say kids these days because I'm, aging. The kids that basically they just go to school, their nose is in the books. They get into a residency program, and now they get to practice on mommies.
They're still doctor kids.
I know, they're doctor kids.
But they don't have that practical experience. And yes, there's not just in labor and delivery. Medical mistakes in general are much higher in that month of July.
That's there. I didn't include that.
I'm not trying to get all
that in the book.
I'm not trying to get all of the top.
That is definitely definitely a time where I've had more cases in July and August than any other month. Actually, I ended up doing a chart. I tallied everything with a lot of the cases, and by far July and August had the most tallies. And nothing again, there are some amazing residents, but that's what people, there are some really good residents, there are some other residents, but I'm sorry, it is what it is. But they have these residents really running the show on labor and delivery. And, but again, they haven't had that hands-on experience. So sometimes things, get missed.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I would say that's part of that systemic problem. And I mean, you've got the resident. Let's say they're making decisions. They're supposed to be supervised by an attending, who is like the professor,
Mm-hmm.
doctor. If something goes wrong, I mean, do they both get sued, or does that fall mostly on the attending?
They both get sued.
They both get sued. So welcome to healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because the residents are always jumping up and down saying, I was under the doctor. And I'm like, sorry, you're going to get criticized just like the doctor is going to get criticized. It happens in all the cases. So,
Yeah. So what advice would you have for a mother or loved ones who are helping a mother make a decision in terms of preventing mistakes? How much of it is a matter of choosing to have labor and delivery in one facility versus another? Like, I love data, but is there data that shows which hospitals tend to have better outcomes?
not that I'm aware of. I mean, I really focus on just individual cases because I
Uh-huh.
do podcasts. People ask me like the data and
Mhm.
maternal morbidity, all that stuff. And I'm like, I don't know.
Well, but even from your experience, do you see kind of clusters of like, yeah, there's more cases involving these certain facilities, or that's sort of out of the scope of what you're
Yeah,
looking
I
at?
don't really look. I mean, everything is just a case comes in, we look at it. So it's hard
Mhm.
to say if there's one facility over another getting sued more.
I mean, and I'm going to just wonder out loud. I'm curious what thoughts you have around what's discovered through the legal process, through a case, about the mistakes, the causes, different contributing factors. A hospital and the physician are going to defend that case, but how often does that information then get fed back to help drive improvement, to help prevent the next mistake and prevent the next legal case?
I think it depends on the hospital and the
Mm-hmm.
hospital system. Some hospitals have really good methods on if there's a problem, then they want to have suggestions on how to fix that problem. They identify the problem. I think just the hospital systems are very different in that respect. I think some work really hard to
Mm-hmm.
learn from their mistakes, while others, don't have the systems in place to allow them to do that.
Yeah. One other question I wanted to ask you, Gina, and this is, I think, part of systemic issue, thinking of like workplace culture and hierarchy. How often are there disagreements or challenges, let's say, when it comes to nurses and the physicians, of the nurses wanting to speak up? If the nurse spoke up and was listened to, that might have prevented some sort of problem. Like in your visits of different hospitals, I think when we talked before, you've had a lot of conversations with nurses who have a lot of ideas about how things should be different.
100%. That is more of, since I have published my book, for instance, Pitocin. Nurses love my Pitocin chapter. They are like, thank you for writing this down because we're constantly getting, the doctors are constantly on us, up, 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 up. And so the doctors typically are not at the bedside. Doctors are called in to catch the baby. It's the nurses that are
Mm-hmm.
running the Pitocin induction. But if the induction is taking too long, then the doctors will be like, up, up, up. And,
Oh, because they're rushing it.
they're rushing it, which is a problem,
Yeah.
a huge problem, by the way. And
Mm-hmm.
so when they're doing stuff like that, it depends on the nurses. The more senior nurses are, they'll give pushback a little bit. The newer nurses, listen, labor and delivery is rough. And I've heard
Mm-hmm.
from so many nurses over 21 years. I mean, it takes a good 5 years to figure out how to be a really good labor and delivery nurse. So then the doctor is telling you to up everything. You're learning, maybe you up it even though you don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
But no, the nurses absolutely love my book because they have not had this in writing before that Pitocin is the number one most common fact and issue in a baby case, meaning when a
Yeah.
baby's not born healthy, Pitocin is typically involved in the case.
Mhm.
And then, I've also analyzed this drug again since February 2003. I've seen that induction's gone wrong.
Mhm.
I've done so much research on this drug. So then I wrote this chapter, which the nurses love. So I've
Mhm.
had nurses, I have one traveling nurse right now, and she takes my book to all of the hospitals
Oh.
and she puts it at the nursing station on labor and delivery for the nurses to go through, saying, listen, if you don't want to up it, just point to Gina Mundy's book, So yeah, no,
Yeah.
the nurses, they've had nothing to stand on
Mhm.
until my book was published. And
Wow.
they're out there. I mean, I'm in podcasts with a labor and delivery nurse, Kelly Hoff, called The Birth Journey. I mean, she
Mhm.
just loves the Pitocin chapter. She's like, all my nursing friends, she's like, here you go. This is the ammunition you finally have against these doctors who want to keep upping
Mhm.
it. So yeah, no, it's the labor and delivery nurses, they are like my favorite people. Even in my
Yeah.
cases, they show more human emotion than any,
Mhm.
other fact witness for the defense. They're amazing humans. They're trying to help these moms, and sometimes I think they feel like their hands are tied.
Mhm.
But there is information in my book that's definitely helping them to be able to speak up and have a basis for it finally.
Yeah. In a situation like that, as you've talked about, the doctor saying up, 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 that leads to harm to the baby. Is the nurse also getting sued, or is that the
Oh,
doctor's decision of
Oh no, they up
all?
it. They're getting sued. And that's what they
Mm,
don't like that answer. The nurses do not like that answer. But I've been talking with the nurses and I'm like, listen, you up that Pitocin because they're like, well, do we just chart that we disagree with it? I'm like, yeah, you're incriminating yourself, but go ahead. No, the thing
mm,
is you have to advocate. You have to go to your charge nurse. You have to go to a different doctor. Tell them you are
mhm,
not comfortable with upping the Pitocin, and this is
mm,
why.
right.
You're going to have to advocate. It's called going up the chain of command. Now, some
Mhm,
hospital systems and nurses do that more frequently. Maybe smaller rural hospitals don't do that as much or whatnot.
mm,
But no, I'm like, you're on the hook. If you up it, if you think upping it may harm the baby and you don't do anything, you are 100% on the hook.
and then there's a choice of you might get yelled at. That's better than getting sued, and it's better for the baby.
Yeah, ultimately, the goal is the delivery team's primary responsibility is to deliver a healthy baby. That is what
Yeah.
they are responsible for. In these childbirth cases, it is the care of the delivery team that is at issue and analyzed more than any other aspect of the case.
Yeah. Yeah. So one other question about the nurse pushing back. Let's say if spouse or partner of the mother has read this chapter, they're aware of this risk, they're in the delivery room. Like you're not really in a position to try to micromanage the doctor or to say, hey, don't, hey, you might be upping it too much. Like that probably doesn't happen.
Should.
Or
So
yeah.
I've been on, it's interesting. I've been on a lot of like podcasts, and it's a lot of moms actually who have started podcasts because they had such a horrific Pitocin induction. And
Mm-hmm.
it's literally traumatized them, as humans.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had one mom, she had to have a second Pitocin induction because her husband was getting deployed. And that second Pitocin, so her first one was so traumatic. Baby was okay, but it was very traumatizing. So the second
Yeah.
Pitocin induction, she was like, she talked about it to her doctor during the pregnancy, not at the hospital. She said, listen, I want it slow. I want it steady. Before it is increased, I want to know. I want it
Mm-hmm.
only increased by one, not
Yeah.
two.
Right.
Basically, I was so proud of her during that podcast that I was actually blown away because what she's recommending is exactly what my chapter says.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
so no, this is listen, mom is the decision maker in labor and delivery. the
Right.
delivery team, the doctor, the nurse, the midwife, the resident, and anybody else, there are technically medical advisors. Mom makes the decision. So if
Right.
mom or dad, probably mom because it's her
Mhm.
body, mom's like,
Right.
if you're going to have an elective Pitocin induction, again, this is discussion during the pregnancy. How much are you going to increase it? So if you want it increased by 1 and not 2, a doctor should accommodate that. And if a doctor doesn't, get a new doctor. And not
Mm.
only that, you want to know how often is it going to be increased, and then make sure they tell you. So we talked about my niece's labor. She was on Pitocin, and I had to go give them the Pitocin rundown real quick. That the delivery team never increased her Pitocin without telling her. They
Mhm.
actually asked her if they could increase the Pitocin, and then
Mm.
they explained why, and together they made a good decision.
Yeah. Yes, that kind of partnership. And I feel like I made a mistake in how I framed that previous question. I'm not a parent. I've never been in a labor and delivery room, so I'm exposing my ignorance about all this. When I asked about the husband or spouse or partner, I wasn't trying to take away the mother's agency over her body and birth, but I think I asked it that way, thinking of like, well, if the mother's in pain, or I think I made a mistake, and so I apologize
Actually, Mark,
for not asking that.
no, you didn't make a mistake at all. Actually, there's a whole chapter in my book on that. So
Yeah.
basically, because mom is in labor and mom has to physically and mentally focus on delivering the baby, dad actually needs to step up to the plate and again,
Mm.
protect his wife, protect the baby. And again, that's what my book tells them how to do. But in doing that, he needs to be an advocate. His wife needs to be able to look at him, give him the look, the nod, whatever. And husband needs to act and move and know how. Again, my book will help him know how to do that. So no, the husbands actually are one of the keys literally to having a healthy baby by sitting
Mm.
there and protecting his wife, protecting his baby. So no, that is
Okay.
100%. I think up until my book was written, I think dads didn't really know what to do
Hmm.
during labor and delivery. So this really lays out, this is what you need to know, this is how you can help your wife. So no,
Yeah.
dad's a huge role in having a healthy baby, 100%. And I can tell you from what I've seen in my cases, if dads would have known some of the information that is in my book,
Hmm.
it's possible that, they would have had a different outcome.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's all a team in that labor and delivery room. Parents, nurses, doctors, everybody involved. Hopefully, I think a better team environment is going to lead to better outcomes.
So that is definitely what is stressed in my book. It's everybody working together. And, when I say, for instance, the delivery team, they get busy, they're running hard, they're running thin. Okay, then this is what you need to do to work with your delivery team to make sure that they understand what's going on. Because listen, if, the delivery team is missing something or your baby's in trouble or you're in trouble, it's important to be able to work with them because the delivery team, it's almost like a treat when they're busy like that's like a triage. So
Mhm.
if mom or baby over here is in trouble, but this mom may have stalled out in labor, but the baby's fine, they're going to go to mom and baby that's in trouble. I mean, they're unequivocally going to do that. They're going to beeline for them and fix it, So, but as long as they know, and that's where the
Mhm.
family comes in. Is again, it's more working with your delivery team again to make sure you're all on the same page. Yeah, this is, you know, a lot of when I log on to podcasts or people look me up, everyone's like, well, which side do you represent? Or, they'll ask me. And I'm like, listen, when I'm out here talking about my book, how to have a safe, delivery or whatever, I don't even, this is not an adversarial proceeding. This is
Mhm.
about everybody coming together, everybody working together. So the baby is born healthy. So mom is around to raise her baby. And that's what the most important thing is. Obviously, the lawyer part of me, that's an adversarial proceeding. And that's a bit different.
Yeah. Well, Gina, thank you for sharing your stories and knowledge here. I hope it helps people. Pointing them to your book, I know, is going to help them a lot. So our guest today, again, Gina Mundy. Her website is ginamundy.com. We'll put links in the show notes. Her book is A Parent's Guide to a Safer Childbirth, Expecting the Best, Using the Power of Knowledge to Help You Deliver a Healthy Baby. So Gina, thank you for your knowledge and for your caring and advocacy, around all of this. Thank you so much.
And Mark, you are so welcome. And I just want to throw this out there that I have been reading your book, and thank you for putting that out there, because I think I make more mistakes than even just in my life as a mom or whatever. But just, having your perspective on them, cherishing them, learning from them, if somebody in my house makes some mistakes, understanding and being kind. But yeah, your book is definitely an amazing book. I've learned so much from it. And let me tell you, I've recommended it to so many people.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And, maybe down the road, we could do another episode with you and your attorney hat on, talking about fear of mistakes in the courtroom and going up against Jeffrey Feiger. There's so much more we could talk about. So maybe someday.
I love it. Great idea.
Thanks a lot, Gina.
Yeah.